and
The Ann Arbor Cable Communications Commission meeting for Wednesday, August 7th, 2019. I'm John Torgerson, Chair of the Commission, and everyone else will be introduced as Lisa Wondrash, City's Communications Commission Director, calls the roll.
John Torgerson,
Here.
Tony Ramirez, Carol Denitz, David Pittman,
Here.
Dave Chappelle,
here.
Tom Wright,
Here.
Bonnie Gabowitz,
Here.
Jack Eaton.
Here.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce our two newest Cable Commission members. Welcome, Bonnie Gabowitz and David Pittman. And if you can, we'll start with Bonnie. If you could say a few words about perhaps your involvement with CTN or why you decided to volunteer for the Cable Commission for our viewers to
Sure.
hear from you.
First of all, I've done a lot of things here at Cable. I'm very familiar with the studio. First of all, I've taken workshops here. Like many citizens, I've gone through some educational programs, learned how to run the camera. I've actually volunteered to do camera work. I've gone to regional conferences that support cable and PEG channels. And I also am a host of Ward Talk, which is a monthly program discussing the issues of the city of Ann Arbor, all different aspects with the council members. And I, as a retired educator, I'm a firm believer of getting the word out and supporting all of the parts of the city and really supporting education as well. So I am thrilled to be a commissioner this first month that I'm here.
Thank you. David, you want to talk about your background a little bit? I know you have an interesting, helpful background that you bring to the commission.
Sure. My name is David Pittman. I come to the commission having worked previously, began my career as a weekend producer for WJR with Tiger Baseball, and then later as a WUOM and WCBN as a student producer in radio. So my background specifically was on the radio side. I also founded Ann Arbor Community Radio and GoodVibe.fm, which are community-based media networks specifically focused on music and cultural arts. So my interest really specifically is on developing community radios with focus on audio and radio programming, as well as content for the blind and visually impaired populations.
We joked with David that he has a radio voice. You can hear that.
Okay, great. Well, welcome. We really appreciate you volunteering to be on the commission. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Okay, and then we move on to approval of the minutes.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Okay, we move on to public commentary, and it looks like we have no public here today. So I think we'll move right on to the CTN report.
Okay, this is the report for the last quarter, from April to June. And I'll begin with the highlights. In April, we completed training on our new playback system, which actually the training is going to be ongoing as we implement the system. We'll continue to go through different training as we explore the different features of the new system, and as we try to take advantage of some of those. We had our annual coverage of TEDx Youth out at Skyline High School. We participated in the Ann Arbor Citizens Academy. We had a new air conditioning unit installed. It was kind of fortunate in a way. It was right before the summer hit with the big heat. We had that installed in our Cablecast server room. It replaced the old unit, which was 11 years old and was not functioning very well. And we began coverage of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission. In May, we completed our spring sports coverage for the high schools. We covered the Local Officers Compensation Commission, who we cover every 2 years because they only meet every 2 years. We also covered Solid Waste Resources Planning, I think it's Advisory Board or Commission. They're another group that's meeting for, I think they have one more meeting that we're doing and then they'll be done. And then in June, we had our annual coverage of the high school graduations. We also covered a special joint work session of the Ann Arbor City Council, Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, the Scioto Township Board, and the Ann Arbor Township Board, where they had a meeting about the dioxane plume and what's going on with that. We participated in the Mayor's Green Fair with a booth this year, much like we do at Art Fair or Townie Party. And towards the end of June, we actually began streaming 2 of our channels. The government channel, educational channel, began streaming through our new streaming servers. And not part of this report, but in the next one, once we got into July, both of those channels are now running off of the new servers as well. And by the next time we meet, all 4 channels would be transitioned over, hopefully. Then we have the programming information, government channel. You can see we produced 60 meetings over those 3 months, as well as we cablecast additional meetings of the DDA and the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority. Then on the public channel, we had 168 programs premiere. We had 53 programs submitted for playback, and our community producers completed 59 programs. And there were 79 portable equipment reservations and 591 hours in the editing and studio facilities. We conducted 4 public workshops. We had a Rec and Ed camp with students, and as it was the end of the school year, we finished up the trainings that we do with Huron High School and Skyline High School. Then for the educational channel, we had 151 programs premiere during those 3 months. That included 8 Board of Education meetings that we covered out at Forsyth Middle School. And then on the community channel, we had 44 programs premiere, including the ones that are listed there. Our video on demand, the Vibit service, which is basically city meetings, had over 5,000 hits. You can see the Board of Education was very popular during that time. So people were watching that, but also the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission got a lot of hits as we started covering those. And then our YouTube channel had over 26,000 hits, and kind of interesting to us was that our Santa program from 2013 was in the top hits for April and May, which we suspect someone must have been on that show that was reliving it quite a bit. So it's one of those interesting things to see. And that's one of the nice features of things being online. You can go back and relive what happened 5 years ago or 6 years ago. And that's our report for that quarter.
Any questions or discussion about the report?
So, yes, under the APRAC activity, the new AC unit, we rent this space, don't we?
Yeah.
But we're responsible for maintenance of
Just-
things like that?
Just the AC unit specifically within our rental agreement,
Okay.
that we're responsible for that.
All right, just wondered, thanks.
Yeah, it
And
is
that's,
an anomaly, yeah.
That is one of those units specific to that room.
Mhm.
So it's expensive, but not like.
It's not that expensive, and it's
Yeah,
specific to the
comparatively.
equipment that's in there, and us
It's close,
needing
yeah.
to cool that to a certain degree that other parts of the building don't need to be, so it's it is specific to CTN and what we do.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All right, we'll move on to regular business.
So there was, the Federal Communication Commission did finally release updates to the cable franchising rules. And while I haven't gotten any additional information from our city attorney's office on this, and I am not an attorney, nor do I profess to be, I will give a general overview to play it safe from what the news release that the FCC issued, which was essentially that these updates were made to promote broadband deployment and to not allow cities or municipalities to do any regulation or provisions for non-cable services, which would include broadband or internet access service. That is what the FCC issued as to the reasoning for the rules updates. As we previously reported, cities had been very concerned about changes that were being proposed to these rules. One of those being the protection of PEG on franchise fees and our capability as a city to have public access centers like CTN and have our own local programming and provide the content that is relevant to Ann Arbor. So as these rules that were implemented, there are several factors that were updated. However, they don't apply to CTN because we have our own iNet, and that no longer is provided by our agreement with Comcast or serviced by Comcast. It's a city. City-owned now. So that rule change does not impact us. There was a pending, we also don't have any regulations about, Wi-Fi or wireless or broadband within the state franchise agreement. That was not allowed anyways, and because we have state franchise agreement, that provision would not apply to us. It might apply because this was obviously nationwide, it might apply to another city in the country. But the one change that's not yet determined, that the FCC will be determined within a year, is whether or not our PEG channel capacity is a non-monetary contribution that can be offset to franchise fees. So that was an area of concern that the Alliance for Community Media, NATOA, and others will be monitoring closely. The city did submit our objections to the proposed FCC rule changes when those were being accepted. We would continue to monitor this and submit our concerns about channel capacity being offset as well. So I'll keep everyone apprised as we go along, but so that is still the one outlying issue that has to be determined, that we'll have to keep monitoring. But as far as all the other details go, I will wait to forward any additional legal assessment that's done by those who have that area of expertise. This was just released last week, so it's still quite fresh. So are there any questions about?
So you're working with the city attorney's office on these matters?
So the city attorney's office, specifically Abby Elias, received a copy of the rules and responded that she had not yet taken a look at them and would. Again, we did receive, a brief assessment from Alliance for Community Media on what the rule change impacts were, and because we don't have those non-monetary provisions within our agreements, then we don't have outstanding issues right now. It would be this last one that has to get worked through for us to determine whether or not we would have any budgetary impacts for 2021.
Thank you.
Yeah, so.
Has the value of the non-monetary, has that been
No,
evaluated?
and so that's kind of what is
Devastating.
problematic, that we don't know what that would be, what it could be, what our
Potential loss
options
would be.
might be.
And we should put that in the context that we're already struggling with the franchise fees diminishing over time. So if they
A
continue to cut away at
significant
that,
offset would be problematic.
it would be pretty huge, yeah.
Yeah. So typically, because we meet quarterly, I forward via email, when I get information on this, to all the cable commissioners, and I, of course, would, talk directly with John if in fact we needed to have a meeting sooner than later, if there was some action that the cable commission needed to take on the matter. But typically, we would work through the city administrator's office in doing any formal submission to, you know, when they do propose rule changes and as the city wants to submit formal, letters on how those could impact the city. And I provide that to the cable commission.
Great. Any other questions?
Well, also, I think CTN also does a good job of keeping the public abreast of the situation via Facebook posts and Twitter feeds.
Yep.
So anybody, there's
Yeah.
always an update on there.
Yes,
So
yeah.
that's very,
Ways to monitor it,
Ways
yeah,
to
and the
monitor it.
ACM with their email listserv, and, yeah, there's definitely channels to keep updated on what's happening.
yeah, yes. Also, I just noticed that a lot of East Coast pig channels are really active.
Yeah.
For some reason, Boston
Mhm.
and, for some reason,
Yeah,
I don't hear any much about Midwest or West Coast pig
Well,
channels really making
it
waves.
really also, so there were a lot of East Coast municipalities who, they do not have state franchise agreements. And they had, there was, some cities in New York that they had individually negotiated with the cable companies certain provisions that, because we've been under a state agreement that didn't allow that for more than 10 years, then we no longer have contributions or offsets for our INET within our contract or things, so there were greater impacts to those who might have negotiated these provisions, and now they would be essentially voided, although I do expect there would be some legal challenges most likely that would take place for perhaps cities that had those provisions and now might no longer be able to have them contractually.
So the state of Michigan did us a great favor by having statewide agreement, in a way.
We
I'll
ourselves
let
a favor
you-
by
I'll-
buying out the internet.
No comment.
All right. Well, it could have been worse.
Yes, had
That was
that
my
not
point.
been taken away earlier.
Yeah, it could have
I'll say
been
that.
far worse. I'm trying to be positive.
She's trying to be careful.
Yes, indeed, I want our
Yeah.
state people
Thank you.
happy.
Okay. Any other points of discussion on that topic? All right, so let's move on to the CTN marketing plan.
So the last meeting, which Bonnie and David were not yet members, we had decided that at that meeting, we had gone through this in our orientation, the memo and the work that the subcommittee had done to assess our current financial situation and move forward with a plan for how we might be able to either expand CTN services or streamline them in a way to then help meet our budget. That memo that then went to City Council, that Council Member Eaton then in June made everyone aware of those provisions that were there. At that meeting then, it was asked that at this meeting, we talk about CTN outreach then. Because although we are perhaps streamlining services, we also want to ensure that everyone who's able to access CTN services knows about them, And I think there were many at the table who, there's a lot of people in the community that aren't familiar with CTN or know of our free services and how we can ensure that we continue to be a valuable commodity. In Ann Arbor, if in fact we had to move to seeking additional revenue, in the budget from city council or, to help support all of our services. So that's where this came from then, this conversation. But CTN Bondi, our assistant manager, she also oversees our marketing and outreach. And she put this plan together then for this conversation. And we got it last week so that everyone had a time to kind of consume it. And I don't want to read it word for word, but I did want to, generally go over the fact that on a monthly basis, we have our CTN communication channels that would include our Gov Delivery email. We also have our Facebook and Twitter pages and social media outreach that way. And our resident newsletter, and we also do advertise in We Love Ann Arbor, as well as issuing press releases to the media on various programs or awards. So that does happen on a monthly basis, that we continually do that type of outreach. The other way that we showcase this was on page 2, is your winter, summer, fall kind of view, because there are times of year that we do face-to-face outreach. And I was seeking ideas from anyone here who might know of festivals or outreach opportunities to throw them out or to email me later as well. Obviously, Art Fair is a huge summer outreach opportunity, but yet, as we all know, that might not be a huge majority of residents who attend Art Fair, whereas the Townie Party is, and Green Fair, and we're trying to balance outreach opportunities with staffing and time-intensive activities as well. So there are some things that we do that maybe don't take as much staff time, but we are reaching residents directly, which is really what we'd be interested in as our audience. There was some other future outreach ideas that we were working on right now in developing a social media campaign to promote CTN, which would include our video on demand as well as our media training and workshops, because there's kind of two components to what we provide. All of the public meeting, online access, and CTN programming that people can view via cable or online, but then we also have the media and training side that we provide that we want to promote to people. So we're working on that social media, the creation of that social media campaign right now, and the intent was to use our free social media channels, but also to do paid social media ads, and we're able to target residents with those social media ads as well to make sure we're hitting our audience. Another idea that we're exploring was working with our City Parks and Recreation Department in promoting our camps via our own Parks and Rec department, and they have an online, and they have wildly popular programs, but helping them or utilizing them to help us to promote student opportunities during spring break in the summer for parents that might not be aware of the programming that CTN offers. Alicia does a magnificent job with our camps, and we have wait lists for those, so it would be a great opportunity then for us to expand and promote those as well. We also, Mike Koski also does an adult program now that was recently going to be promoted via the Ann Arbor Rec Ed for adults who are interested in media training. Yes.
Can I also mention that the FYI program done by Dana Denhoff
Yes.
is getting national recognition. The spot that she did on Youth Impact Program, which is a national program, is being highlighted on their website nationwide because the program that Dana did is the best filmed event of their camps anywhere in the United States. And as a result, I attended their big event that they hold at the Big House. They showed Dana's program.
Thank you for mentioning that.
And the key was people all the way up to the top of the athletic department at U of M were very impressed with the work that Dana and the CTN staff did. And it is now being shown to other like camps that the NFL puts on, etc. And I think that speaks volumes to the professionalism of the CTN staff, and I just didn't want that
Thank you.
not to be mentioned.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sure Dana does and other CTN staff. Another idea that we had was creating a digital promotional kit. So instead of the old school print media type kits that we might have done by way of, print brochure and printed materials with CTN services and programming, we wanted to work with the communication office graphic staff to create a digital kit that Melissa could use to promote to nonprofits who might be looking to CTN, or cable commissioners who meet with agencies or entities could send that link to them and have a nice visual with video component that we don't have that available right now. So that was in the works as well. We do have advertising that we pay for, which is also outlined. That is not a huge component of what we do. As with, a majority of city programs, we don't have large advertising budgets and rely mostly on free and online media. But there might be advertising opportunities that you're aware of or that you'd like to suggest or pass along that we should consider based upon maybe it's relatively inexpensive, a one-time avenue that reaches a large resident audience. Those are the ideas, that I'm seeking. More heads are better than one. So that's part of this conversation. And then Melissa also outlined the promotion partnerships that we also have that aren't necessarily paid, but they are avenues that we have with the Rec and Ed to promote our programs as well. And then she outlined our social media stats just to give you an idea of how many followers we have. And finally, I wanted to, I would really like us to reach a consensus too in what the goals of our marketing and outreach with CTN in the coming year should be. And by that I mean, is it to educate Ann Arbor residents about the free services that are available? Is it just simple awareness about our programming? Is it a combination? Is it increasing our views, our YouTube view? There could be many components, but I just wanted to get a feel from the cable commissioners on what they think should be really the goals of our marketing and outreach, and if there's any thoughts on that.
I think one of the biggest things we need to do is get improved content. And I think that Melissa and the staff has done a fabulous job of appealing to new avenues of content. For instance, as a result of a change in policy from a couple of years ago, saying that if your nonprofit covers Washtenaw County, you can write a letter allowing a producer to place your content on our airwaves. For instance, one group that allowed to, for the first time 2 years ago, appear on our airwaves was the Bob Woodruff Foundation out of New York. They regularly are working with Bruce Springsteen, Stephen Colbert, and the foresight of the CTN staff to allow that improved dramatically the type of content that we can receive. So hats off to what they're doing to bring in better content. And also educating the people here, because I'm a community producer, a volunteer community producer, about Peg Media and how you can put your videos on Peg Media and make them available. Most nonprofits that I work with have no concept of Peg Media, and they have been most appreciative of that, and that includes stations like WJR that I work with and others who think that the Alliance for Community Media and specifically CTN are a great resource they need to partner with that they didn't know existed.
So I would say that a goal of the marketing should be, of course, to increase viewership, but also to make Ann Arbor residents aware of the value
Yes.
of having CTN. Because especially if, as we go forward, if our budget continues to tighten, we will need the support of the community to fund these operations in the distant future. So it really is important to me that those people that live in Ann Arbor recognize what value they've gotten basically for free up until this point.
And that's helpful, Jack, because that then helps us to the content then that we include in the social media campaigns and that type of component, that those are the areas that we have to hit on then, examples of value that we provide.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the
Yeah.
feedback that I'm, and when I say social media campaign too, there's varying levels of that. Like, it doesn't just mean that that's the sole focus, but one of the focuses of the social media campaign can be promoting CTN value as far as local programming, local content that you can't see, elsewhere, and our unfortunately the decline in the media landscape everywhere, and CTN now fills that gap.
So when you have a program that you anticipate is going to be popular anyways, if you link to it on your Facebook page or somewhere
Yeah.
to try to draw in more
Right.
more viewers,
Yeah.
so that they recognize what you're already doing very well, and B, understand the value of CTN.
I have two ideas.
Okay.
First of all, have we ever done a presentation at the public libraries? They have so many wonderful presentations of what's going on, workshops, but also just wondering if we could have a presentation to say, what are some exciting things you can get out of our cable
Okay.
studio. And in line with this is a big idea, and I'm just throwing it out as a brainstorm. If we had some kind of ambassador program in which we had volunteers, possibly the commissioners or other people who are involved, who could be invited to go to some of the local membership meetings. There's so many clubs and groups, people who are do-gooders, who are meeting to do better for the community, people who are meeting for social reasons. We have such an enthusiastic community where they're always getting together. I'm just wondering if somewhere we can fit in as some kind of representation, as to say, look at all we have, isn't this exciting? Would you like to learn how to do
Yeah.
a show, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And I know it's a
That's
big
it.
idea,
Yeah,
but I'd like to
that's- I love
start
it.
with
Yeah.
the ground floor.
Might I add, we've already started doing that to a good extent.
Okay.
Rotary Club of Ann Arbor has been utilizing CTN for special speakers they have come in. For instance, they had Jack Harbaugh come in. And we sent in a film crew to film him. That's Jim Harbaugh's father. And the Rotary Club people said, wow, CTN does this. Then when they opened the big playground that Rotary raised millions of dollars to produce, CTN was there to capture everything about it for the city of Ann Arbor. And all the Rotarians are thrilled with CTN, and they said, gee, maybe if we're going to attract younger members, we need to have our younger people get trained at CTN so they have a new job skill, and then that makes us more relevant to a younger population. So we're starting that, and we have also been working with faith-based organizations across the spectrum and talking to them about how can you utilize CTN and how can you train your volunteers towards compassionate care outreach that you might do for, let's say, the VA, or let's say at-risk kids, those sorts of things, so that they have new skills. And we're getting great response. Just 2 days ago, I shared with Lutheran Hour Ministries, which is a $50 million international outreach organization in St. Louis, about how we can utilize some of their old programming and then do new intros, outros. I got the head of their international ministries to approve to broadcast on CTN this revised program. So we're getting really good stuff to put on our airwaves, and it's by doing just what you said, educating people and getting them excited, because most people don't know about the Alliance at all.
David?
I think those are both wonderful ideas, specifically the district library. I think not a lot of people even know that there's a recording studio in the library that a lot of groups access for their regular programming. And I think that would be a great partnership to develop, to just transfer that content that they're developing already, make them aware that CTN is available as a resource. In terms of numbers that I would be looking for, I would obviously the number of locally originated programs, the number of hours on the annual basis, that would be something I would really be looking for as far as how we're doing on a year-to-year basis as far as developing new outreach strategies and finding new programming.
So just to clarify one point, as people are coming up with ideas and letting this thought process kind of mature over the next few weeks and months, is it okay if they send you their suggestions by
Absolutely.
email?
I think that's best.
Yeah, and this is the intent, that this needed to be a living document. And we haven't had this conversation at the Cable Commission before. So as you come across entities that don't know about CTN, or as you see advertising opportunities that maybe we should look into, the other thing that I think that we need to work on, that we can't be at all of these events at all the time, and although an ambassador program's a great idea, we are video, and why we don't have a fantastic video that's specific to those groups to learn about that is, I think, an opportunity that we need to
That would
fix,
be a
that we
great
need to
starting
fix.
point.
So you might have gone to a meeting and met someone that you could share that video with later, and they could share it with their group, and not everything has to be in person, although that's a great conduit when,
And Melissa and the staff here a couple of years ago did a great video talking about all the resources
We
of
do have,
CTN.
yeah, we do, and I don't mean to say that we've never done that, or we don't have it, but as we're looking at refreshing a
Yes,
digital
absolutely.
package, we need to look at that, and some of it might need to get broken down too, depending on the audience
Yeah.
and what services are available. You know, just a general resident audience, we should be via video showing them, you know, how to access our programs and just bring it up to date, since we have different platforms now for them viewing things.
And being that you can do it all online and make the reservations online instead of by paper, I mean, the system that's been put in place is so improved that I think people would be amazed as to how you can access everything.
Dave, did you have a comment?
Yes. You're gonna need a lot of paper. I think we're missing something here. I looked at this, go to these pages. All you see here is CTN City programming. There's no talk about the volunteer channel, channel 17. CTN has 4 channels, 16, 17, 18, and 19. And right now, all I see, you know, there's, and all of the board meetings I have attended deals with city TV. There's really no talk about channel 17. And it's all staff, you know, stuff to do. And this outreach, summer outreach, you got Art Fair, Tony Party, Greenfield Farmers Market, and Youth Media Camp. You know, I do the Ann Arbor Summer Festival every year. And you know, and I produce quality video to show, to draw people in that way. Now, you mentioned earlier you wanna, how can we expand on this summer outreach program to reach other areas that they have? Now, they have a yearly car show every year. Now, usually, why don't CTN, seeing that we cut back a lot of the program and a lot of the staff here, why don't CTN reach out to the volunteers saying, you know, they have a car show coming up, that yearly car show, why, you know, we don't have the staff anymore to produce a show. So why don't you ask volunteers, a qualified volunteer, to go down there and make a video, a highlight show?
Dana did cover
Yeah,
that.
yes, yeah, I saw that. I mean,
Uh-huh.
she said it was little segments. But I'm just, you know, I'm just saying, you know, CTN has 4 channels. It's just not one channel, you know. And I like to know what viewers watch the most channel. I mean, you got the educational channel, which is really not part of CTN at all, right? I mean, that's the school district's own little.
No, we run
No,
that.
You run that.
yeah,
This is all 4 channels,
it's CTN.
Then you got the government channel. This is 19,
16,
16, and 19 is,
community.
and 17 is
Public.
the public channel. And I just don't see I mean.
It's not broken down by channel, no.
Right.
We didn't present the information in that way, you're
But,
correct.
you know, reaching out to the public channel, I know some of the stuff you see on the public channel, you might cringe a little bit. But, I mean, I think we're missing an opportunity there to reach out to the volunteers to help make CTN aware. Also, I think the best marketing ploy for CTN will be to go to HD, is to get Comcast to finally show us in HD. I know a lot of people, I don't, you know, ever since I got HD TV, I don't watch standard definition programs unless I have to. Now, I'm an avid viewer of CTN, so I go to CTN all the time, 10, 20, 30 times a day to see what's on. But I go there because I know about it. People, I mean, but that's it. I don't go to the standard definition channels anymore. I mean, even though they're not showing up on the HD channel lineup. And And I don't know what the reason, I mean, obviously Comcast must give you a reason when you say we can telecast in HD, and you go to CTN and say, or you go to Comcast and you say, please show us in HD, they must come up with an answer saying a reason. They must give you a reason why we're not in HD. It's either a cost factor, a technical factor, or they just don't care.
All three.
All three.
Yes.
You know, because you start showing us in HD, I guarantee you that our viewership would increase. You know, it would just seem, you know, logical. I mean, here, how many people watch standard definition TV? You know.
So, based upon the state franchise agreement, we are currently under a 10-year agreement with AT&T and Comcast. We don't have the capability to negotiate outside of that legal contract. And going way, way back in the day, Comcast was required to provide public access channels under the lowest tier of cable, which being in that low tier, you know, under channel 25, when people were surfing channels, that was greatly valued because people would come upon your channel and not, you know, we didn't have 80 channels back then. Some of us can remember, you know, when we had 3 channels to choose from, but that's just explaining, you know, back then that was very valuable, and now we've moved into HD, but that's outside of our negotiating power that the state has given us.
Is there any big station in the USA that televises in HD that you know of?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, I believe there are a few who have negotiated because they are not under state contracts or state franchises, so they have their own, like we used to not have a state franchise, so Ann Arbor would negotiate with Comcast, and at that point we could have said, as part of this deal, we want to have HD channels. And in some other places they have done that, but in not very many, and they've had to give things up. So they may have had 5 channels, and they said, okay, we'll get you HD, but you're only going to have 2.
Okay, I mean, that's a trade-off, and it might be a trade-off that we'd be willing to look into. I mean,
But we
I think
can't
for-
now until the agreement is
Negotiation.
renegotiated
We're under a
after the
statewide
10-year
agreement.
term.
understand
So we can't really change the terms of it.
Yeah,
No.
that, you know.
Yeah.
the state law won't allow us.
There's good things about having a 10-year agreement, and there's bad things about having a 10-year agreement.
You know, but you know, I just like to see more. You know, I mean, I feel being a volunteer producer for the public TV channel, I mean, I don't see nothing that, you know, that pertains to what I do here.
And promoting the work that you do, or
Not so
trying to
much-
clarify the
volunteer opportunities? Or-
Right.
Well, I mean, it seems like we're concentrating on CTN City TV. And more
Well,
than.
in there is things about workshops. You know, we have Soapbox and Access Ann Arbor, which are on the public channel.
Right.
And that's for individuals or organizations to come in. You know, that's what a lot of these are talking about, like the We Love Ann Arbor, they'll talk about workshops and come in and become a volunteer. It's not necessarily promoting a specific program that the staff might do.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Looks like
But that's, you know, I mean, that's just I agree that outreach is good, and you know, in order to make more people aware of the services that we do offer, you know, we should do everything in our power.
got it.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, Bonnie?
David, you mentioned having more volunteers involved, and I would like to put this question to Greg. Would it be appropriate to identify which types of jobs are appropriate for volunteers to take responsibility, and are there certain things that, even though they might be qualified legally or whatever, it's really better to have the staff take that responsibility? Do we have some kind of clear picture of what volunteers can and cannot do to support the station?
Well, we've used volunteers in most of the areas and the different projects that we do. It has changed over the years.
Mhm.
Go back 20 years or so, and it was a lot of volunteers, and gradually staff built up. And we've talked about that going forward, especially as we've looked at the decline in the revenue,
Mhm.
is to try to utilize volunteers more often, especially on, production work that happens in the studio or out in the field.
For sports specifically,
Some of the sporting
that we had talked
events.
about that were non-essential productions.
Mhm.
No offense to sports. But for instance, city council meeting, and if a volunteer doesn't show up to capture that meeting, or another board or commission meeting that is publicly noticed, we can't have someone not show up for that. And so there are those particular productions that do have to be staffed with paid staff. But to your point, that was identified in tier 2 of our planning efforts for next year, that if we were able to have a dedicated set of volunteers who might be able to focus on the sports component or a particular sport, and then cover those.
And that, it was a way that we did things many years ago that I think we're moving back towards again, where we used to have a group of volunteers who would work on a particular program, and it could be like a Ward Talk show, and they could do anything on the show. There might be one staff person who would still kind of oversee it and decide what person was going to do what, camera work or audio board or direct the show. And they have a little group of them who they'd get to come in every month. It might always be the same exact ones every month, but they might have a pool of people to pull from. So we may be moving a little bit back towards that.
Any other comments on this subject? Just to summarize from what I think I heard, and that is, I believe I heard that awareness and outreach appeared to be the most important goals in the immediate goals, with viewership and education following it for the time being. Okay, moving along. Commission staff comments. And seeing none.
Well, before we move on, I do want to welcome our new members. I really appreciate that you've volunteered. There was a point in time when we struggled to have a quorum because our membership on the commission had dropped significantly. So welcome aboard, and I really appreciate your input.
Thanks, Jack. All right.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second?
Moved and seconded. We stand adjourned.